Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. David's ogling eye found her. As we continue looking at parables of the Old Testament, today we come to a story you likely know pretty well. It's a story that quickly captures our imagination and interest, as it has elements of sex, adultery, betrayal, palace intrigue, and even murder itself. On top of that, the story happens in the royal court, and a cover-up was attempted that makes Watergate pale by comparison. Of course, I'm talking about King David and Bathsheba. So, just to remind you, David was the king, and one day he was walking around one of the upper stories in his palace, and he saw Bathsheba bathing on her rooftop. Bathing on your rooftop might seem a bit odd to us, but in those days the ground floors were at street level, and windows were just openings in the wall anyone could see through. So any privacy would be on the roof where you couldn't be seen. But David saw, and his heart was filled with lust. He sent for her, slept with her, and sent her home. Then she sent word that she was pregnant. David's first solution was to send for her husband, who was away at war fighting on behalf of David and the nation. If he comes home, he will sleep with her, and everyone will think the child is his, David thought. Only her husband Uriah kept the vow that all the soldiers had taken to remain pure as God's army, and he didn't go in to his wife Bathsheba. So in the end, David sent Uriah back, carrying a message to put him in the front of the battle, and then to withdraw from him. And sure enough, Uriah was killed. And David thought he had gotten away with the whole thing. But the thing wasn't hidden from God. And a man named Nathan knew or figured it out, or God revealed it to him. So Nathan went to David and said, "I need your help to decide what should happen in a particular case. There were two men in a certain city, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing but one little ewe lamb which he had bought. He brought it up, and it grew up with him and with his children. It used to eat of his meager fare, and drink from his cup, and lie in his bosom, and it was like a daughter to him. Now there came a traveler to the rich man, and he was loath to take one of his own flock or herd to prepare it for the wayfarer who had come to him. But he took the poor man's lamb and prepared that for the guest who had come to him." The Bible tells us, "Then David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. He said to Nathan, 'As the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. He shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity.'" And in one of the most dramatic moments of the Bible, Nathan raised his hand, pointed at David, and said, "You are the man." Well, it turned out that David was devastated, and he deeply repented and eventually took Bathsheba into the palace to care for her. Now, for many of us, we aren't sorry for what we did wrong. We're sorry that we got caught. Well, David certainly tried not to get caught, but once he then was truly sorry for what he had done. He repented. And because of his repentance, God did not strip the kingdom from him. One of the interesting things about all this is that if you jump to the first chapter of Matthew in the New Testament, Matthew traces the genealogy of Jesus. A lot of people skip over this, but there are some important things even in these fairly boring verses. One of those interesting things is that Bathsheba is mentioned as an ancestor of Jesus. and mentioned in a way that makes sure we are reminded of this tawdry scandal in his line. Matthew said, "And David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah." She's not called David's wife, which she was at that time of Solomon's birth, but still referred to as the wife of Uriah. Our human lives are made up of both good and bad, and the Bible doesn't shrink from the reality of how things are. We are assured that both good and bad, we all belong to and have part in Jesus. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.